Well, New Zealand vegetable growers have had a cash injection of $4.7 million from MPI recently, and this is to help transition crop production into more sustainable land management. Joining us now is CEO for Potatoes New Zealand, Chris Claridge, to discuss this further. Chris, how long has this been in the process, this particular sustainable vegetable systems project?
So around about September last year, almost 12 months ago, we were instructed by growers to work out how much nitrate was being leached out of potato and vegetable crops. And we were given quite a clear direction by the industry. Let's actually work out how much nitrogen is being leached out of vegetable crop systems. And let's look at the current modelling systems, and let's use scientific information to inform potential mitigations and also to improve the current modelling tools so we can more accurately project what's going on. And that's what we straight away started a potato project, and we've got some preliminary results that were good. And that has informed a larger project, which is the Sustainable Vegetable Systems Project, which is supported by Horticulture New Zealand, Onions New Zealand, Vegetables New Zealand, the New Zealand Buttercup Squash Council, and also Processed Vegetables New Zealand. So the entire vegetable sector's got behind this. So we want to work out what are the actual amounts leaching out of the bottom of vegetable crop rotations, and working out how to better predict and also mitigate nitrogen leaching going forward.
Because for those who are not aware, vegetable growing in a smaller concentrated area does have a higher nitrate leaching profile than particularly pastoral farming and arable farming. Am I right?
Well, yes and no. So you're partly right. So some vegetable cropping systems can result in high levels of nitrate leaching, but what we are swiftly discovering is we can actually design vegetable rotation systems that can meet the regulatory limits that are being set, and also meet the national standards which have been putting in place. In other words, we believe that vegetables can work out ways of mitigating the leaching and therefore meet the regulatory frameworks that are coming in. And in the case of potatoes, we're getting some really good figures. We've improved the projection models so that they're better and more accurate. And we're getting some really low readings from potato crops now, which is really assisting us in showing that vegetable cropping has a role to play, and it's not going to harm the environment, which is a critical message we think should be picked up, that potatoes are good for you and they're good for the land.
Now, multi-land use is very much a part of New Zealand's future farm management systems, and we actually went to a organic vegetable growing collective near Leeston to realise that they do retire in a rotation with livestock. Do you want to see that type of thing become more and more with the collective that is part of this funding, that we can move into more systems as opposed to monocropping vegetables?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're looking at is we're running a number of work streams, and the first series of work streams, the first work stream is with plant and food. So using controlled experimentation to work out what is actually dropping out of the vegetable crop rotations and controlled measurement. And then we've got 9 different regions where we're looking to monitor out in the fields, and we're monitoring in Pukekohe, we're monitoring in Matamata, in Hawke's Bay, in Horowhenua, and then down in Canterbury to see what actual rotations generate in terms of leaching, and then identifying, using that scientific data, how best to improve the tools to predict, and also what potential mitigation techniques we can adopt.
Fantastic. And I mean, what type of outcomes would you like to see from this particular funding? It's a 4-year project.
Yeah, so this is quite a focused project, which is about trying to work out the environmental impact of intensive vegetable growing and different rotations in different regions. Because what we've found is that different regions generate different results. So you've got to adapt your rotation systems to suit what is possible to grow in that region, and also what the market requirements are for that region, and also what the regulatory requirements for that region are. So this is about being adaptive and responding to what the signals we're getting from the central government and also local government in terms of requirements for freshwater standards. So,
yeah, let's talk about that in terms of freshwater standards, because, I mean, if you're a livestock farmer, you're feeling pretty beaten up when vegetables and arable have been nearly exempt from these new standards. How do you feel about that?
Well, I wouldn't say that we're exempt from those standards, because we're going through plan changes. We've gone through plan change 1 in the Waikato. We're currently going through plan change 2 in Horizons, and commercial vegetable production is going through plan change 7. So the vegetable the vegetable sector, and potatoes is included in that, is faced with meeting the regulatory requirements of the regional standards, regional councils, and meeting those national standards. And we're being proactive to identify how we can meet those standards and how we can improve what we do to make sure that we reduce our environmental footprint over time. But what we need to do is first get the science in place. What are we actually leaching? What are the models like Overseer? Are they accurate? How do we improve those? And if they're not suitable for a particular vegetable rotation system, what other models could we use? And then going forward, how do we mitigate and how do we head to those targets that as industries we've adopted? And in the case of potatoes, we've adopted a zero net emissions by 2050. So we're looking to see how can we, moving forward as an industry, reduce our environmental footprint in order to meet that social and regulatory license, which is so critical to operate.
Now, Chris, I do have to ask, we're missing, for those who do follow Chris being a part of Cirrus Country, we have a different backdrop. You're here in Canterbury, crossing across to us tonight, as opposed to your musical background that you normally have on set. What brings you down here? What have you been up to today, getting around your growers, and how are they faring with, last time we chat, it's about this dumping of fries and the fearfulness of a globalisation and nationalisation problem across the spud industry?
Well, I've had one of those days which was just so wonderful that it sort of makes the whole job really worthwhile. So we started off last night in Ashburton with a meeting of growers. We were talking about Plan Change 7 and working out what the growers were concerned about and walking them through the regulatory changes proposed by the regional council and working out what our approach to it was. And then we spent the day visiting the potato processors today. So this morning I've been at McCain's in Washdyke, Timaru, meeting the wonderful team down there and the McCain's crew who generate wonderful fries. Then we went around the corner and met with Heartland chips, which, and unfortunately I don't have any to show you, but we've been busily eating them as we've been driving around. The wonderful team at Heartland Chips who produce the Heartland brand, and we were very lucky to be able to test some of their new product. So the Bowen family who run that plant, again, we were talking to them about the impact of the plan change and what that would mean to them. And then we met with Makihi Fries, and then last we were at Tally's. So we've been going through the processes because in the potato industry, we recognise that it's not only the growers that face these regulatory climate, but also the processors. So it's trying to work out as an industry how we respond to it and how we adapt and manage the change process of bringing industries into this new environment where we've got to be responsible and we've got to make sure that we meet those environmental settings that central government and indeed the consumers are saying to us that we've got to meet.
It's actually a real theme of tonight, Chris. We're talking about change in general. You would have heard earlier we were talking about that. And I mean, there's got to be some things though that we can't change. That makes us Kiwi, that makes us just, sure, change is important, but fundamentally we've got to be nostalgic about some things.
Well, I think for the primary sector in New Zealand, we've always been subjected to change, and change is constant in our world. The weather changes, patterns change, and consumers change. And I think as a country, our ability to adapt and be flexible and learn how to operate in a new world with what consumers want and what our customers want worldwide is absolutely critical. So I think we have to embrace change, learn from the past, absolutely, but don't get stuck in the past. Try and adapt and change and modify. Now, as you get older, that gets pretty difficult to cope with change. It's because it's deeply unsettling. But I think it's critical as an industry, we take the opportunity of COVID-19, we look closely at what's been happening and adapt for this new environment. And I think that if we are careful about it, we can position New Zealand very well for the future. I think as well, people are recognising that the primary sector is the key to economic growth and therefore for better social well-being. So I think the primary sector, if it embraces the challenges that it's in front of it, these regulatory and environmental challenges, I think we can position ourselves very well for the future. I'm actually very positive about going forward.
You're telling me that you will not be listening to the same music now when you're in your 80s, though? I mean, there are some things you wouldn't change.
Well, there's elements of life which that it's great to look back, but you can't live in the past. You have to live in the now, and you have to embrace the future and the change. To me, yes, you can listen to the odd song or music from your past, but listening to what's current and keeping up is part of life. And I think resistance to change is not a good place to be. I don't think that's an issue of age. I don't think it's an issue of gender. I don't think it's an issue of ethnicity. We have to embrace the future because that's where success comes from.
Thank you so much, CEO from Potatoes New Zealand, Chris Claridge.
This is Sarah's Country.